If Jim and Ramona Markalunas had their wish, everyone would be riding the light rail from Aspen to Glenwood and beyond. They've been leading rail advocates for years. But trains are only part of their story. Trains embody history, progress, and good old-fashioned hard work, all key elements of the Markalunas story. So let's take a train ride back to their beginnings. Jim Markalunas has Aspen in his blood. His grandfather, John Warkentine, was a mine surveyor in the 1880s, and his mother, Elsie, was born in Aspen in 1907. A third-generation Aspenite, Jim was born in 1930. Post-mining, pre-skiing. It was Aspen's quiet years. His father, John, was a minor league baseball player from a Pennsylvania coal mining town. He succumbed to tuberculosis when Jim was only 2. But his mother and extended Aspen family, especially the sisters at St. Vincent's, saw to it Jim was raised properly. As a young boy in Aspen, Jim began his lifelong fascination with trains.
But I could climb aboard the old 1028 or the 1016, and they'd let me climb aboard, and I'd ride along with them, and they'd let me shovel coal in, and I could, they say, well, pull this gauge of that, and it was, so that's how I sort of fell in love with it.
After high school, Jim joined the Marines and served a tour in Korea. He returned to Denver in 1952, where he met Ramona.
The next thing you know, I was introduced to Ramona, and of course, there was that spark of magic that took off, and it was a whirlwind courtship. And then June 5th came around, and we were married in 1953, and we've been happily married ever since. Maybe a few rough spots in the road, but
Ramona was born in Wichita, Kansas, but family connections in Colorado eventually lured her parents to the Western Slope when she was still a young girl.
My mother was born in Colorado.
The San Luis Valley.
In the San Luis Valley.
Moffett.
And then my grandfather liked Grand Junction, and he loved horses. Pretty soon my dad was tired of Kansas, and my mother said, well, let's go out, we can pick peaches and everything out there and see how we like it. And they liked it.
Apparently, trains were a shared love since they spent part of their honeymoon touring Colorado train stops. In 1952, they returned to Aspen over Independence Pass and set about raising a family. 4 children, Julie, Lisa, Thomas, and John. Building a home in the West End, and ultimately building a legacy of volunteerism and community service.
We got one of the first loans from a lending company called Rocky Mountain Savings and Loan. They had just moved to Aspen. We were trying to get something on the GI Bill, but we couldn't get anywhere. The government wasn't loaning any money. It was too speculative in Aspen, so they weren't loaning any money. We went down to see Pat Bell at Rocky Mountain Savings and Loan, and he said, well, he decided to go ahead and loan us some money. We needed $10,000 to build our house, plus a line of credit from Tom Sardi. And so I'd never forget the comment he made when we went down there. He said, well, when I said, we're going to go ahead and give you the loan. He says, because you 2 kids have both got steady jobs, and it looks like you'll be able to make your mortgage payments. But, he said, I don't think Aspen is ever going to really amount to anything,
Jim worked for the city of Aspen in numerous capacities his entire adult life, starting in high school, working on the flume crew for Aspen's water and electric companies back in 1948. He later went to work at the hydroelectric plant, originally organized back in 1885.
And we would work on these wooden flumes to keep the water going to the powerhouse. But we had great times, and it was really a lot of pranks going on. Like we would float watermelons down the flume, and then they'd get busted up sometimes, but we had some great times. So
the power plant on Castle Creek was scrapped in '62, and Jim moved on to other city positions, including city and county building inspector. He landed in the water department in '65 and became the superintendent in '74, where he remained until his retirement in 1990. If you like old-time Aspen stories, Jim's got more than a few.
Yeah, here Aspen Mountain water tank look, we'll just put wooden shingles on it and you won't be able to tell it from a condo. Don't you think that's great? Other thing I used to watch is I could tell when the movie would get out, or people would watch television, I'd see these little blips, and I would try to connect it. And so when we had the final episode of MASH and the final episode of Winds of War, you could see people were glued to their television sets, and when the commercial breaks would take, here would go this the blip on the thing that for the toilet flushing, and then the end of the commercial, and then the water, the flow rate would drop off, and it would continue until the next commercial.
While raising a family of 4 energetic kids, Ramona also worked with the town's only real estate attorney, arranging the title work that would help establish Snowmass Village and many of the area's growing subdivisions in the 50s and 60s. Though born in Wichita, Kansas, her growing love of Aspen and its rich history led her to help form the Aspen Historical Society in 1963.
Well, Ramona felt very strongly that we should be learning from history, and she discovered that there wasn't any place to go or any history really pulled together from the old days.
Ramona was instrumental in pulling together the falling bits and pieces of the historic Crystal Mill and 2 entire ghost towns. Isabel and Stuart Mace toured her through the crumbling ghost town of Ashcroft, and Ramona was soon on a mission.
And they had taken me through what was left of Ashcroft. And I said, you know, it would be nice to have it fixed up enough so it's standing. We don't want to make it, you know, perfect or anything, but just so that it's kept standing. And so we did.
Speaking of standing, this brings to mind a story that in 1975, the winter of 1975, in spring, the old hotel, the one that's famous, that's on the calendars, the Ashcroft Hotel, had collapsed under the weight of heavy snows that year, and it was a pile of rubble on the ground. And we went up there in the spring, and much to Ramona's dismay and mine both, why here was this pile of rubble on the ground, and she says, well, looks like that's it for the old town of Ashcroft. And Ramona says, no. She says, we're going to put that thing back together, and we're going to put it up, and we're going to put it up. And she did.
But it worked out quite well. These 2 fellows knew exactly what they were doing, and they got it all separated, what they had, put a framework up. They put the old material on, and what they didn't have that looked old, they made it look old.
And you know, Ramona and her troupe deserve huge credit, because we might not have anything at either of those ghost towns. There was some controversy about having regular citizens swoop in and try to save the buildings. If they hadn't started, we might have absolutely nothing up there at both ghost towns, and it's a treasure. We have more visitors there than anywhere else in our historical system.
Enormously civic-minded, both Jim and Ramona have served on Aspen City Council. In fact, back in 1971, Ramona was the first woman ever elected to Aspen City Council. She was actively involved in acquiring open space parcels, like the golf course and the Thomas and Rio Grande properties.
Ramona worked very hard on historic character of Aspen and maintaining that, and open space, and worked to get open space purchases, and was very important. You know, she always did her homework. She was always prepared for council meetings. You could not fool Ramona. Jim came in the 90s, and he had such a great style on the city council. Jim gave every single council member a little 3-minute egg timer, and it was his way of telling them that they could say it in 3 minutes, and he put them in front of each person's place at every council meeting. Their passion for, as part of history, the sweet peas. And Ramona was responsible for the packets of free sweet peas that came out every spring. And in fact, it's the only thing I ever planted that worked. And Jim used to bring sweet peas to the council meetings. And in fact, he got the sweet pea designated as the city's official flower.
Both Jim and Ramona volunteered for community causes too numerous to explore in detail here. Ramona was a founder of the Independence Pass Foundation. Both are members of the revitalized Aspen Grove Cemetery Board, and Jim is still a fixture with the Salvation Army, manning the Christmas collection bucket at City Market every year. But perhaps no passion exceeded their combined enthusiasm for travel by rail. They formed the grassroots Western Slope Rail Association to promote the use of light rail in the Roaring Fork Valley, and came this close to bringing passenger trains back to an area they see as desperately in need of this transportation solution.
We've always been strong advocates of that the only solution is rail. I would think that I would have died and gone to heaven if we could initiate a light rail system, if I could ride it. You know, we did a demonstration project when I was on the city council in 1997. Siemens brought a unit over here, self-propelled DMU unit over here, and we did a demonstration between Glenwood Springs and Carbondale, and on one weekend we had 3,000 people ride that. It was a good demonstration project. It showed what could have been possible.
Passionate about Aspen, yet modest about their accomplishments, Jim and Ramona Markalunas embody the true spirit of civic activism and volunteerism that benefits the lives of everyone in this valley.
That there's a duty in the next generation to preserve what the past generation has done.
We have a wonderful
exactly
heritage
right.
in this community, and so that's sort of what we are. We're sort of caretakers.